Okay, bouncing back onto the hood for the 30. One of the things that been a couple of comments on is why haven't I welded that onto that yet? And because I typically weld on that bench. I built that small welding bench, but it turned into a forming and cutting bench. And I use it a lot for that. But the whole point is with this pickup in here, it's kind of given me about this much room, and I can't really turn around. And when you TIG weld, you got to have your positioning right. I usually go on the bench, or I'm risen off the bench a little bit, raised off the bench a little bit, back up my chair, lean forward, and then there's just it's too close for me. So one thing about TIG welding is comfort. You have to be comfortable because you're using all your extremities and then some to do a good job. So I'm moving on to forming the inner structure for the hood. So now we know we've got the hinges made, and we've got I've identified the location of the hinges on that black line there, in that black line there. So now I'm making two inner structure pieces. These are just 2-inch pieces bent on the center or the midline, and now I'm just basically shrinking it to form it around the cowl. Now the important thing is that this is going to hold the skin, the hood skin, so the location up of it is very, very, very important. This piece will consist of 2 angles, one form this way and then a mirror image that way. And then I'm going to weld in the bottom on this corner, and I'll make a hat channel out of it. Okay, in that hat channel there will be pads that will accommodate the tops of the hinges, or will fasten to the hinges. In my thinking on this is, let's see here, let me get this correct. The hinge sets that way, is that I will weld then on this double, I'm going to weld the flange, okay, across this, and it'll have probably 2 or 3 or 4 bolts, maybe 4 bolts on each side, because this will tee off up here, and that'll be the size of the pad in this. The width of this hat channel will make sure to accommodate the length of the pad on that. Now we'll recess and put weld nuts on it, and then that top piece will have slots so that you can adjust the hood, as will the mounting to the firewall. This back piece here will have slots so that you can raise and lower it and get the hood into adjustment. I'll build another hat channel that follows the shape of the front. And in that, then I will have a pocket for the latch assembly. I will likely run a cable down the hat channel and along that radiator support, or cowl to radiator support, this channel right here, and inside, and then have a hood release on the inside of the car. So at this time I'm focusing specifically on that. And when I get to that phase, I will pull rods across. It doesn't matter whether they're, relatively straight, relatively perpendicular to the firewall. I'll pull rods across, and this will raise up to those rods. I've taken the liberty to tape off and measure in 1-inch increments all the way around here from the center line. And that'll give me a plane, right? It'll give me a plane to work with to build the inner structure up to. When that hat channel is in, and this hat channel is in position, then I'll build a side. And whether that's a hat channel or not, I want it to tie in to one continuous inner structure that can be removed and installed, and then this will bond, panel bond, to the hood. So we'll accommodate the shape of the hood, the beginning and ending points, to get so the shape of the hood will be, it'll have to sit on here with zero clearance, enough for panel bond, and of course the skeleton will open and shut as the hood would before I bond the skin on it. So it's a lot going on, but at this point I'm just simply forming up the hat channel, the beginning of a hat channel for the rear of the hood. Okay, as you can see now, we're sticking out the end there, and I'm coming around the corner here. So I've trimmed once, I've trimmed twice, and you can see, if I can get in there, I'm standing out. Let me put my finger on the body. Well, I won't be able to let me put the scissors on the body. Right there. Now it's tapered, but I can see, I'm not following that taper. You can see it's going in. The taper is going in. You can see the hood line, right? So I'm going to have to put a little bit of twist in this thing, I think. I'm on my center line. And now I'm just simply holding this up against here, not holding it down. And I've got work to do right in this area here. So I've been shrinking and then hammer on dolly because this is starting to, so you got to stretch this. I've been hammer on dolly to stretch this back up and then shrink. And of course it gets harder and harder and harder because as you shrink, the material gets thicker and thicker and thicker. What I'm going to do right now, I think, instead of continuing right here to shrink, now I'm going to go to the other side. Because once that curve starts to take shape, it'll begin to lock in. Now I've got it very good from here down to here, and then I got to start shrinking it until she starts to set up against. And again, it's me. I don't know if I ever showed this, but that's my Harbor Freight shrinker and stretcher mounted to a pedestal, mounted to a flywheel from an old tractor or something. It's heavy. A couple of turnbuckles, welded up some 1/2-inch threaded rod so I can turn that. I can increase or decrease my leverage if I want. Never done it because I've always had enough. You're only going to be able to do 18 gauge is probably the max. If you can move 16, you'd be lucky. You just wreck the dies. Took a piece of flat, cut out reliefs, so that I can do shapes in this way if I want to do compound. And it works very, very, very well. I've got the other piece right here that I haven't done anything with yet because I'm going to lay that on top of this. It's going to be the jig so that this edge, the mirror of it, follows that line. It's a lot easier than doing it on the car. So at this juncture, I will continue moving on to that side. Okay, we're starting to hone in on it. Again, on the center line. And I'm not going to touch it. We're touching all the way around. And I can see it's an optical delusion, but this is turned in a little bit. But I am just right at the edge of the sheet metal now, knowing this piece is going to mount forward. Well, I'll show you that in a minute here. It's going to need to be honed a little, but this is going to get me in track. And then we can see over here, we've got some shadow because I'm up. And then, come on. Can we focus? There we go. But I'm not there, so I got to do a little shrinking here, pull this in. But I am oh so close. Another thing to kind of consider is from the front, from the original stamping, you can see that sticking out a little bit. And that sticking out a little bit. For me, that's critical because that tells me what, as I'm coming in where I'm going. That original stamping is not an inch, but it gives me some consistency, and I can always measure it, right? I can always measure it from side to side and know what my coverage needs to be. But I'm assuming when they stamp that and shear at the edge, it's very, very, very consistent, just like a frame, you know, just like these eyebrows right here, here, and all that. So now I'll keep, now I just got to basically start fine tuning this in and then build the other one. Well, you can see the twist in it right there. And she's pulling back. So little hammer and dolly, just keep on, keep it on. Now, for additional context, the hinge, come on now, is probably going to sit just in front of, or the mounting point is going to sit just in front of, I might be a little bit wrong on that. Here, let me get this out of the way. The mounting point, I got a reference to the drawing. I was right. The mounting point is going to be just in front of that, this bracket. So this is going to sit just close, approximately maybe about 1/2 of an inch in front of the firewall. Okay, maybe 1/2 of an inch in front of the firewall. I don't want to, there, about like that, about like that. So when it's closed, there'll be clearance there, and then that hat channel will come in, and then that next piece will go on. That'll form around it. So the thing is now is, you know, well, what is the size of that thing? Because this is tapering in, right? It's a declining dimension across. So once I get these two formed, then I'll have to go in and continue to shrink and bring those curves in as that hood piece comes this way. But how am I going to find those lines? I'm going to take and put dowels across. My theory was 6, 3, and 3, and it might need to be more, but I'm going to run them across, and I'm going to set them on the lower edge here, and on the lower edge on the shelf here, this is a bead that sticks out. I'll measure my dimension from here to here, but I know this is 3/16, and I checked it in various spots, and so that's 1/875, and my material is 50 thousandths, so that leaves me 1/375, right? Yeah, 1/375. No, yeah, 1/375, and 1375 is a little over 1/8 of an inch. So I could probably put an 1/8 inch, you know, some 10 gauge, 130 thou, sitting on each one of these. And then I still need obviously some glue area. 7.5 thousandths might not be enough. So maybe 12 gauge, 100 thou I could put on there, find it, run that up to it, right? And then I'd have enough for panel bond to fit in there. Something like that. Just trying to explain it. But we can see as it's sitting in front of there. So I'm a little off center, but and my sides aren't trimmed perfectly, but I'm up against that piece. But the gap to the firewall, it's very consistent. We need to get it perfect though. So going well. And I don't know, sitting over there, sometimes when you do something else or sleep or it doesn't matter, you get some ideas. So then I got to thinking, okay, I established the center line, not this one, but this second one in. This one is technically crossed out. But there's some lines on here. This is the top of the hinge, relatively speaking, and then down there is the bottom of the hinge. That being when the hinge is fully up, well, the top and the bottom. Doesn't matter whether it's fully up there, that distance, which is approximately 4.5 inches, something of that nature. So what I did was I blew out a piece, and it's got a long slot in it because I want to set this on here perpendicular, that is the length of the hole, and locate it identical to the other side. You can see it's tight, it's small, and it's like, oh, is that even going to hold it? Well, I blew out 5/16 holes, 3/4 inch movement in the hinge. And as we can see, once this is mounted, there are several design considerations here. Where's that slot? There I'm on the slot. Okay. See? Top and bottom right there. Okay, and the hinge at rest will be right there. Well, look, I can just get a bolt into the center of that slotted hole. So I can go up 3/8, I can go down 3/8. And that gives me the reason why I had a notch for this bracket right here. So I'm retaining it with 3 5/16 bolts. You can see that there have to be some disassembly literally to get the hinge in. Well, I can probably get this in and then assemble it. But that's the backing plate for the hinge. That's the hinge mounting plate. So these two, this and this, will become one. I'll have to use cap head screws, socket head screws, run an Allen wrench in to tighten them. But that's good. I can do those in whatever fashion I want. I got enough room for a washer in there, and I can get the top and bottom done. I just basically sanded these to 120. At this point, I'm still, I got my left and my right. I'm still in the dark on what exactly it is I'm going to do, excuse me, and for finish, whether I'm going to powder coat or not. Which brings me to the next issue. You powder coat them, and they have some clearance in them, but they're going to rub each other. And I'm trying to think of ways for them not to rub each other. So I went on McMaster Car, and I went ahead, even though I made them all, I purchased these at exactly 3/8 because they give me the tolerance, plus or minus 5 thou. And I purchased the washers. I Loctited it in 3/16 bolts. They're 3/8 wide, so I'm putting a 3/16 on one side and then a quarter inch on the other side. And the stack up is I had it written down somewhere, 356. So I got some 80 thousandths machine washers. They're in there, right there. 3/8 inside diameter, 80 thousandths machine washers. 8 thousandths machine washers, shim washers, and those are gonna put a gap between each one of them. Although 8 thousandths isn't a lot, it'll take up the full distance. Everything will float freely, but I will space them. I'll look at them because 8 thousandths is, you can build powder coat to 12 mil. If I build the powder coat to 4 mil, You don't want to have any shadowing or see-through on it, but if I can get away with it, I'll go with the powder coating route because I think it'll look nicer. So, moving right along. Okay, back on the hinges again, just kind of showing what I did. Order from McMaster Car. I know I talked a little bit about this in an earlier video. 3/16 and a 1/4 inch. Okay, 1032s. I ordered up a bunch of barrels. I know I made a bunch for these, but 3/8 by 3/8. So 3/16 and a 1/4 is, and 2/16 is, or 3/16 plus 4/16 is 7/16. So I ordered two these shims. Excuse me, right there. There they are. So they're 8 thousandths a piece. So I got 16 thousandths. 60 thousandths is a 1/16 of an inch. But I'm putting one in between each bracket. And then I should have a little bit of room, you know, for grease or for whatever. Lubrication. So I had a big faux pas though. I had a weld nub on my press. After I welded these, I went back and I pressed out and I hit these nubs. You know, fortunately, that's not the arm. When the arm goes on, you'd have thought I'd have saw it through the hole. You know, it'll cover those up, but I probably hit that with the TIG and take them down. These are all going to be powder coated anyway. One of the reasons why I wanted that 8 thousandths. But this was, you know, something, an idea, a concept that I wanted to do. I know these are backwards to these and all that, but and I had to trim. You can see the heat mark on here. I had to profile those to a smaller radius so that they clear the TIG weld in the hinge, and still be able to get it in. Everything's so close. But anyway, Phillips head screw, a nut. I could have turned them down, right, and made them flush and all that. And I just didn't like the look. So those are smaller washers. They're button head screws, and I'm going to take you over here because I did slip the hinge in. Because this has always been the most critical thing. And I actually can get it in from the bottom. So this will sit on that center line. And that hinge looks quite pretty. With everything in, I mean, there's a pull on them, but of course they are going to loosen up. They're going to work open a little bit, but they're pretty. It worked out really good. And come on. They're identical on each side. Now you're looking at the sheen on here. If you've got any comments on that, that's 120. Just 120 on a 2-inch roll-lock disc. So I need to keep some on there. You know, you can powder coat at 80, but I don't want my depth to be much. So now I've got this assembled. I'm going to assemble the other one, and then I'm going to powder coat him, or then I'm going to build the hood mount. I'm still thinking about that. I want to get them both rough mounted before I build the hood mount, I guess, because I want to drill the holes in the firewall and mount those up, get them aligned, and then validate the space between the hinge and the hood side here, because I don't want to hit this right with them down. I want it to be on the interior side as much as possible, but I want to grab some meat also. So I'll get to that as soon as possible. This wound up working out great for that profile. So now that's the phase I'm at now, is to get to the hinge so that I can make the hat channel and the pad with the weld nuts in it to locate the hinge. So I may do, you know, a big hole with a nut, a movable nut that moves within a caged nut. That's what it's called. A caged nut might be a better solution so that I can go forward or back, you know, an eighth of an inch that way, an eighth of an inch that way, inside to side, so I can make sure I can center everything up and have it fully adjustable. On the firewall, the hinges just go up and down. So I'm at that juncture where I need to mount them to the firewall and then start fabricating the rest of this again. Alrighty, so now there. What I have done, you remember these tape marks, and I put 1 inch increments on here. This goes down to 18 inches. I ended there. This one to 12 inches. Counting up from the center line. So 1 or 2, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. I took the total distance for one side, okay, down to this rail, and the total distance for this side down to that rail, and divided them out or established the ratio. In this case, 1.38 was the ratio. That the length over there is 1.38 inches longer than here. Okay, so then I started here and I moved out to 2 inches. I multiplied that times 1.38, which gave me something, 2 point something inches, and like 2 3/4, I don't remember, and so on and so forth, and put these bars in. It's missing this one. See, I put 3 on each side. There's 2, third one's laying up there. And then I slowly moved my formed piece forward. Okay, I was doing it on this side. You can see the little C-clamp on this side. Okay, I can see that it's not touching there. It's touching out there. It's not touching there. It's touching there. So it's clamped on this side, not touching that one, not touching that one, but touching that one. And I am off center. Let me get it straight. There. I'll think the camera's in the center of the phone. It's not. It's on the top of the phone. So I need to move that way. Well, clearly, it pushed that rod right off. So I need to put more shape into it, and I need to decide where to start that shape. Well, at this juncture, clearly it looks like I need to move this way, and I push that bar off, so I need to move, increase my shape on the end. Now I can move these up, move them around, so on and so forth, as much as I want, but at this point I'm establishing my primary shape. The goal is to get that line on center, okay, and for it to touch all 6 of these, and at the location that I want it at. In this case, 1/2 of an inch away from the firewall. And that'll begin the hat channel. The other piece, the reason why I didn't form the other piece is because I knew it would be smaller. I was going to make it this shape, and then I got to thinking, it's how much smaller is it going to be, you know? And so I didn't roll the edges. I got it bent, but I didn't start forming the whole thing. I got some shape to it. I think I got it over here, right there. I just started that primary break every inch, or shrink every inch all the way down. And so now, kind of neat, you got an outline of what the hood's going to look like. it looks really small because of the cowl on these. Remember, in the 33, the hood came way back. In 30, the hood didn't come all the way back. The cowl shrunk. This shrunk part moved way back. He had the same leg room, but they just did the sheet metal different. Anyway, so my hinges are in. My hinges are on the same horizontal plane. It's time to build the hat channel. Start with the rear piece, then form the front piece, which will be right here in this neighborhood, right? I will form a piece in that channel that will bolt to this. I will weld a flange on here that will bolt up to the hat channel on this side, on that side, on both sides. I don't know at this moment. But the first order of protocol is to get that bent, to decide the width, the spread of the hat channel, and then to go from there. I'll keep you posted. Okay, so my son came and we worked on this together. It's a lot easier with two people on this. Anyway, we got the back side now is in. We've established a distance from the firewall, 1/2 of an inch. Just simply used a plywood block to get in there. You know, give it a distance so we can stay consistent, because this is a complex 3-dimensional triangle. And now I'm starting to form the top one, and I'm back to the same thing. I'm got it on the top, but I have gaps here and here, and gonna get that shape. As we were moving along, one of the important points is to make sure that the sheet metal, in this case this is an 1/8 inch stock here, this here, and that is oops, right at the surface. It's right at the surface of that. So no matter what, the sheet metal that's bonded to this, which would be 18 gauge, is 50 thousandths, I have enough for panel bond. And then the rest of the panel, even though there's some excess on here, all I'm doing is I'm touching across the metal. You can see I'm touching there. Now we got some twist in there, and we'll have to work that out, but now I'm below this edge because I don't have an elevation on it. This is my pointer. So anyway, now I work the front out, and then I start to build the channels for the bracing. So that's what I'm off to. Okay, so continuing on with the hood hinges now, just trying to get things finagled in. We can see the hinge is all the way down, but I've got a taper on it. I want it all the way down because as the hinge goes out, it pushes forward just a little bit, 5/16 of an inch, but it pops up. I got 3/16, you know, I don't have anything on here, but I have a 3/16 gap here, but it'll pop up 5/16 when this hood is way out of the way of there. It'll move forward 5/16, but in that arc that it moves, that hood will be way up. So now I basically just plasma cut out a couple of brackets. I did the old zip, 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 and then bent them because I wanted to assure that I was just dead on. Okay. Now this is the higher one, that's the lower one, so this will go on in this direction to run this hinge parallel with that rail, which is that body line, which is the hood top, the bead, and the reference point for many, many things. On the driver's side, I have it installed, and as you can see it's kind of hard to, it goes straight up, but you can see, and it'll overcome that and then ride straight up. A very nice opening. I mean, way up there. So that hood is going to have all the articulation course, the packaging on this side is very tight. So this one's cut out to clear. There's quite a bit of clearance there, 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. But I may not get a 4th bolt here, but I'll get 1, 2, 3. These will be welded, of course, and ground, these slots. And then the holes will be drilled in. I'll probably radius the corners, but I wanted to show you how that was coming along on this side of things. Okay, it's about 10 minutes later. See my notes on there. But basically all I did was cut out the material here. See the hinge, this sat on the hinge. So I'm not going to remove anything up there yet because I have to build in my hinge pocket, you know, right where it's going to bolt to the hinge. And so some of this will have to be removed, all of that kind of thing. So at this point, I just got her down. This radius cuts in. Slightly goes in behind this. This is flat and this has got a bit of a curve to it. So it peaks right toward the center of this distance. I didn't finish the bottom yet on either side here. On the front of the frame, then he's proud of this piece because this touches the radiator support right here. And I want to keep this, I don't want to put twist in this because that sheet metal goes straight. And we got a 30 cowl on a 33 grill shell. So there's going to need to be magic that occurs here. But anyway, this is only proud of material thickness. Let me try to get lined up about there. It's proud of material thickness on each side. So I have a little bit of a gap I'll have to deal with on both of these because she was touching on the bottom and I wanted this straight in the car. Man, that camera makes, well, when you got lines in the box of this side by side, which is consequently is a spectacular weld table. Just kidding. Anyway, so coming together. Okay, so now we're kind of getting there. I bought the last hour or so, chopped this, skinned this off with the cutoff wheel to relieve for the support that's going to go in here for the brake, for the brake, for the hinges. This is the back side. It's fully welded. The front side is fully welded all the way down. A little dust on there. And the side's ground. And this side, again, trying to make it like a stamped piece. So it's ground down and the weld's cleaned off. You know, as a die would come in, it would leave a little bit of a radius out as the shape changed on the back and on the front. I mean, granted, this is going to be, the skin of the hood's going to go up against it, but you still don't want any puckers or anything like that to stick through. So I'm grinding it down, turning it around, getting the sides, you know, all dialed in. So the hat channels go on next after I build the hinge pockets, because I believe I'm going to have to probably do some of that while it's on the car and reach in and tack it and all that kind of thing, and I don't want any obstructions. So again, for those of you that are new or haven't been watching the channel, this is the inner structure for the hood for the 1930 Chrysler. So making it from scratch because a 1930 Had a different cowl than a 33, and that's a 33, and those are 33 fenders. So it's all part of the game. So continuing right along. Okay, well, I'm starting to work on the pockets for for the spring purchase, for the hinge purchase. I got them sandwiched together here, and these will go on top of there. Actually, they will go like this here. They will follow the outside of the hood frame. They will be welded onto the hood frame. The 1/4 inch will be up inside and likely threaded. But it's like so many other of these types. You start somewhere and you end somewhere else. So you can see this is bent. I initially started forming, knowing full well that I would deform the material, and figured I could do some hammer forming. But I started in 3/4 inch. You can see it's all bent in. That was plywood, and that's what plywood's gonna do. That was my female. This is my male. I lined up with the edge. Cut it off with a jigsaw, pushed it down. It worked, but it didn't. It was way too deformed. So then I went with 14 gauge. I cut it out, put a piece on here, press it in. It deformed the plywood and deformed that too. But I got farther with the same piece. And then I decided to make the interior nut pockets. Said, hey, I had a novel idea. I made the nut pockets that will go up inside here and attach to the hinges, as I showed earlier, and use the center location on these pockets, and they just hammer formed around it. And then I get to thinking I could have just started there. Anyway, so they're hammer formed around. They're not super tight in the corners because they don't need to be. In fact, these will need to be trimmed a little bit so that they have some movement, about 5/16 movement from within the hinge. If I have to move these holes slightly closer together, like half the distance, I can, because I can go with weld nuts anyway on here. So I formed it, and then I trimmed it off at 1/2 inch. They're not perfect, but I try to clean up a lot of my hammer marks. I can ding on it a little bit more too. But the point is that then these will go in. This surface of this half will go in and weld along the interior side of this once this is fully positioned, and this will be on the opposite side. I designed them such that they're identical, but they will clear the brake booster. So I used my original profile and made sure that I wasn't on the outside of any of those marks when this is down in. So without further ado, I'm going to transfer the 5/16 holes to my hinges. I'll slide these in, trim them. These edges I did nothing with. I got to trim them to this profile. Get the whole thing lined up, and I can tack these on. That 1/2 inch shelf should, so this is a 1/2 inch return right here. It'll be higher, and I'll connect that shelf between here and here as it carries itself around. So it'll, again, look like a complex stamping rather than an individual component piece when it's finished. So moving right along. Again, this took me hours in between other things, starting and stopping and doing other stuff. Had to rotate the tires on my wife's car. But in the end, a person could just as well have hammer formed around a shape rather than going through the exercise of everything else. Had I made the dies out of the 1/4 inch, that'd have been fine. And that was my original thought. I was identifying with a workaround because I only had a 3-inch wide band, a 1/4 inch in the shop, but I didn't want to run and grab anything else. So then I made another bench full of stuff. Anyway, we'll keep going. Okay, we're making some progress. Got my hood located. I drilled one hole, started marking it. I thought, nope. One hole in each side. I clamped it, articulated the inner shell that I'm building up and down, and established the location of the pads on the hood, and tack welded them on. So you can see the tacks in there, just a couple tacks. And now I'm slowly beginning to take material away. So I trimmed this to a 1/2 inch, and now I need to integrate that pad into this structure. I blocked, clamped, just got a level, just a light clamp to make sure that these are both flat, right? And they're on the same plane. So this will all be trimmed to a 1/2 inch, and then this will roll that way. I'll TIG weld a continuous strip on, but I need to build all of this structure now in first. And that structure needs to be at minimum horizontal, or actually, opening just a little bit, so that when the pad goes in for the weld nuts, or the pad to adjust the hood, the threaded pad that goes in behind this pocket that you screw your bolts up into, when that goes in, then it'll drop in, and then I can tack it or do whatever. The adjustment is going to be on the holes that I drilled in there. They're going to be 5/16 bolts, but at this point they're 5/16 holes, because I'm locating everything right now to what I would consider ideal, right, to the mock-up. And then, of course, once you get the skin on and you get the bodywork and the paint and everything on it, then you have some degree of adjustability. So the hinges adjust up and down already. They're on slots, you can see on the back side of the hinge. And there. So they'll adjust up and down, but now I need that adjustment. So what those holes will be oversized in the final setup. So we're making it. So now I'm going to start constructing. Got my material. That's what I stamped these pockets out with, but I'll start to build out the pieces for the pocket that will be on each side. So now I made that pocket. In that pocket, I had to shrink it a little because the original piece was formed, but it has a little crook in it. If you remember, right here. These will be the plates that bolt in. Okay, it just has a little crook in it to grab those two outside angles and clear the brake booster. That's why. And I shaped both the same. Okay, right and left. So what I did is I formed up this piece here, paper template, cut off. Here's my basic shape. Then I transferred it to a piece of paper. This is a cutoff, but to get the profile, trimmed it out in flat, and then bent it around. So now this profile comes down on both of them. It kicks out a little bit on both of them. Kind of hard to tell, but it does kick out. It's just a few degrees. I bent the bottom. I shrunk it a little to give that crook. And then I just got tack welded it. I got it tack welded pretty heavily because, these little fingers, you put a tack here and they move around. So I got it all tacked in, and that's the back section. So now I'll go and I'll form the front section. Now, I trimmed this down to here. I didn't trim the center section, not worried about the center section, but I trimmed each side down to here where the tin snips. So this piece then will wrap around all the way around, tie back into this piece, and that's what holds the hood blanket. I can't finish that piece because I have the two hat channels going in, and of course this will tie to that hat channel, this hat channel will tie to that hat channel, this hat channel will tie to that end. So you can start to visualize now what the system is going to look like from this side. This will all be finished off. I didn't want to weld onto a 90-degree corner for a hood hinge because structurally I want as much strength as possible in it. The material, this material is 16 gauge. This material on the body of the car is all 18 gauge. But I just wanted a little more structure in here for rigidity, and it'll tie in. It won't be notable because this box will be finished out, you know, on both sides. So we are almost we are almost tacked in, and then I'll probably come around and just TIG it because I don't want to put a whole bunch of material in the you know, MIG puts so much material in, and the grinding is so phenomenal. It'll be a combination, I guess, but I have to grind it. It has to look like a finished form piece when it's done. So I don't want to show all the welds and all the components that went into the build. So it's coming along. Okay, now I'm fully welded in with the pockets. Okay, the front half and the back. They're wrapped around and welded into the I don't know, superstructure. I carefully bent these ends just using the vise and tapping so that they would follow the form on here, you know, on the tops. So it looked stamped when it was done. So now I'm tacked in. I got a lot of tacks on it, I know. But now I'm going to run around and weld it all up. I think I'll just TIG weld it all up so that I don't pile up the weld. And then after that, then this 1/2 inch will have to roll down and come and meet this. So I'll probably start, you know, back here, begin a roll. It'll intersect into here, be welded onto here, and come down into here. Okay, so the material, the jury's out, but I'm thinking the material I'm going to remove will be on, you can see the weld will be on this side because it'll allow for more access to the top side where the weld nuts will be and the pockets to get in. So this will stay down. This apron will stay here. It'll roll up there and out there and then be removed on the interior side. So subject to changing my mind, but I mean, I think that's probably going to be the best approach. The structure, once I put that flange on, and with this cup, that structure will be very solid in the end. So now I'll weld it up, grind it, and then begin to build this, because there will be weld hidden behind it, right, in some areas. So we'll get after it. Well, we finally got it completely TIG welded. All the way around. And I did MIG some of this stuff in, and then I just reflowed it with the TIG. You can see some of my tacks and stuff, ouch, in there. But she's 100% welded now. The cans are welded on. So now it's time to, I'll let it cool a little bit, trim it up so the pockets are available on the side here. So probably do a quick test fit, because that's a lot of welding in a small area. If I need to ting it, move it around a little bit, I'll move it around a little bit. It's an inner structure, and I'm going to use panel bond for the skin. So I'm not that overly concerned about it, but I mean, the whole point being that if it's out, I got to get it in, get it under, get the shape. So coming along good. We finally have pockets for the hinges. Okay, let's begin. So I've got it all TIG welded together now, except for I need to do a radius there. That is still open. I'll finish grinding the welds, and then the plan is to finish it like this guy here. So it looks as if it's one continuous piece. In a stamping, I'm not gonna, go and body work the thing and all that, but you can see then comes around, and that's where the blanket goes in. Again, there will be a strip going across here. So that'll tuck in just fine. And then on the back side, I still have to do it. You can see the signature of the weld, right? So that all will get cut out. But again, I want to wait until I get this little radius, this fully welded in and completed on both sides. I didn't do that one either. I just decided to clean it up, to take a look at the condition of the metal. You can see where I clamped it in the vise, when I was working on it and all that. And then it looks like a stamping. A stamping has stretch marks and wrinkles and everything else on it. I'm not trying to justify it or make an excuse. It's the under hood structure. If it does wind up getting, I'll probably, put surfacer on it and spray it, wet sand it and all that stuff when it's on the hood. But worked out good. I did when I put it on, I did have to shrink. There's my mark right there. And I did have to hit it and just give it one little shrink to pull it in. It actually went that direction. Just a hair, two hits, just punk, and then she was right in. So it's going very well. Not having any issues. Just plugging away at the meticulous part of grinding, and that you can see my assortment of discs, just working up to 120, so I can make sure that I get the scratches out of it, and it'll cover. So keep it on. Well, both sides are in. I did not radius because I got to thinking it's going to be too complicated to tie it in here properly and make it look OEM. So I just turned straight 90, capped it, sanded it, and got them on. Now off to the other side. So flipped it over. Basically, this is the top side. So if you recall, this piece continued on to this piece. It was welded into here. Now we have a continuous closed out area, and the heavy plate, the 1/4 inch plate with the weld nuts on it, will go into here. But I'll finish this all off. I got to finish the, good penetration, but I got to finish the edges. So that's how the back side works, and that'll sit up on that chassis just fine, or on that frame just the hinges just fine. Of course, the hood will add a ton of strength, but whew, that was a big day. All right, we finally got the top side ground out. Oops. Okay, we got everything cleaned out. I drilled the other back hole for both sides. Okay. And we clear the brake booster. You know, on that side there's nothing. And we have hood. We have a hood. It's a little hood, but you can get in here and change the plugs, you know. You can check the oil, that kind of thing. And voila. So now I need to, of course, finish out the front and get my weld pads in, my nut pads in. These holes in the hinge will be bigger, but we are looking good here. Let me grab one of these straight edges. And then next I'll just dial that in, right? See, I'm touching here, sitting on top of there, and this is a little low, which is what it needs to be, because, you know, I haven't anything on the front done. And then down here, see, oops, I got all the room in the world, and I'm just right up against it. So panel bond will hold that on. And we are in business.